All right, welcome to day 2 of Unit 6. We are going to be talking about adding, subtracting fractions, rational expressions. So we're going to go back in time to when you learned how to add or subtract fractions. So back in the day, you were able to add or subtract fractions if you had the same common denominator. If you take a look at my fraction, what I have right now, I have the least common denominator, so that means I can add and subtract the fractions, the top. So 3 plus 2 is 5. So now what you have to do is reduce your fraction. We know 5 divided by 5 is just 1. So now if we were given a different fraction, now you would have to find your LCD. We can't just straight up add or subtract. Okay, you're going to find your least common denominator or least common multiple. So you can think about all the ways to get what you can multiply to 5. So 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2, 5 times 3, 5 times 4. And then also you can do 3. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, and then 12. So now what your main goal is, you have to figure out what is the smallest number that they both divide evenly into. And my LCM is 15. Another way you could have done that is just multiplied your 5 and your 3 together, and it gives you 15. So now your main goal is to be able to write it as one fraction, but we're going to have to do something. So I have 5, so I want 15. What do I need to multiply by? 3. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So I get 9. And now I have a 3, but I want 15. What do I need to multiply by? 5. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So now since I have a LCD, I can just add or subtract the top. And 9 minus 10 is negative 1 over 15. You can't simplify. That is your final answer. So let us go take a look at the notes. Where are they? There we are. All right, so review. The key to adding and subtracting is to find the least common denominator, the LCD. So again, we have 3 fractions. It's okay. You need to find your least common denominator between all 3 of them. And it is going to be 24. So you can write it as 3 separate fractions, but what also I'm going to do is just write it as 1. So I have an 8 and I want 24. What do you multiply by? 3. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So I get 21. And now I have a 4, but I want 24. Oopsie, I already said it. You want a 6. So I get 18. And I have a 3, but I want 24. I got to multiply the top and bottom by 8. And now what I can do is simplify the top. And I should get 24. I gotta take a look at my answer key really quickly. Oh, 11. I don't know why I thought about that too much. All right. And I can't simplify, so that is your final answer. All right, so we're going to extend that a little bit further to fractions with rational expressions. So we're just going to practice finding the LCD, so it's going to be very similar. Now, when you do it, when you add or subtract fractions, you need to find the LCD, and sometimes you will have to factor. So let's say you want to find the LCD, okay, if you were given these denominators. So for number 1, I want to find my LCD between 8x, 6x, and 3x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the letter C. That means common. What do they all have in common? They all have an x in common. So I'm only going to write it down one time. And then I'm going to think about my numbers. What is the biggest number or the smallest number that all of them divide evenly into? And it is 24. So that would be your LCD. Now take a look at number 2. So you want to think about what do they have in common. They need to have the same variable, the same sign, and also the same number. We have the same variable and sign, but your numbers are different, so they don't have anything in common. So you just gotta multiply them together, or just write them side by side. So that would be your LCD. All right, number 3. It's not as straightforward as number 1 and number 2. you're going to have to factor first. You have to say what numbers multiply to 6, but add up to 5, x plus 3, x plus 2. And then I recognize it's the difference of two squares, so it's x plus 2, x minus 2. So LCD, you're going to start with C. See what they have in common. I have x plus 2. They only have one of them in common. And now you say to yourself, do I have anything else in common? You don't. So you just bring along the rest. So that whole entire thing is your LCD. Now, we're going to extend it to actual problems. So if you take a look at number 1, I actually already know my LCD from doing problem number 1 above. So my LCD is 24x. So now I'm going to take a look at each fraction. I have 6x, but I want 24x. What do you got to multiply the top and bottom? I'm going to multiply by 4. And 4 times 7 is 28. And then I'm going to take a look at the next one. I have an 8x, but I want 24x. What is missing? I got to multiply by 3. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Now I have the next one. I have 3x, but I want 24x. What do I multiply the top and bottom by? 8. So that's why on the very top, I got 16. So I have my LCD. So now I can add and subtract the top, and I get 27. Now, you have to do one more thing to that. You can't just leave your answer just like this. You must simplify your fraction. So if you notice, what number can you divide in the top and bottom? You can take out a 3. So that becomes a 9. Divide this by 3, and this becomes an 8. So I have an 8x. So this is my final answer. So you always have to say, can I simplify it down even more? All right, next one, number 2. My board is not calibrated. That's okay. We can still roll with it. There we go. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Got it. So now, very first step of adding subtracting is see if you can factor to find the LCD. Now, I don't have anything in common, so that's why the whole x minus 3 and x plus 2 is my LCD. So now I can write it as one fraction. So now what you can do is if you have trouble figuring out what your LCD is, or also what is missing, you can compare and contrast your original fraction with your LCD. So what you can do is I can check up what they have in common. Now they both have x minus 3 in common. What I don't have in my original fraction is x plus 2, and that's the thing you need to multiply to the top and to the bottom. So I get 3 times x plus 2. Now I'm going to go to the next fraction, and I'm going to say, what do I have? So in my second fraction, I have x plus 2. In my LCD, I have x plus 2. What is not checked off? X minus 3. So that is the missing link. So that's what you have to multiply to the top and to the bottom. So I got 5 times x minus 3. And I don't suggest that you distribute right away because you might forget about that negative sign. So, of course, now we got to make it look simpler, make it look pretty. So you're going to distribute. So I got 3x plus 6 minus 5x. And a negative times a negative is a positive. And now what I'm going to do is combine my like terms. So I got negative 2x plus 21 all over my LCD. And then you got to say to yourself, can I factor the top even more? No, you can't. So this is your final answer. All right, take a look at number 3. If you notice, I have the same LCD already, okay? It's the same thing. So what you can do is just add the tops together. You can write it as one fraction. And we're lucky that it's a positive here, so we don't have to worry about changing the signs. All right. Now, before we actually combine like terms, I definitely recommend that you factor. Actually, we can do a little bit of both. I can combine my tops. So I got x squared plus 7x plus 12. And the bottom, I got x plus 5 times x minus 2. So you definitely want to make sure that you have everything factored, okay? And so now the last step is you got to say, can I factor things down even more? So you're going to say what numbers multiply to 12, but add up to 7. So it's x plus 3, x plus 4, and my LCD is x plus 5 times x minus 2. And now the very last step is you have to say to yourself, can I cancel anything? You cannot cancel anything. So that's why this is your final answer. And now the reason why we like to factor everything is to be able to cancel things out if you can. Sometimes you can't recognize if you can cancel stuff out if it's not in factored form. All right, number 4. Step number 1 is to factor. And now what we have to do is whenever you add or subtract, you got to find your LCD. So we're going to start off what they have in common. They have an x minus 8 in common. And now, do they have anything else? No. So you just bring along the rest. So that is your LCD. All right. So now we can, since I have an LCD, now we can try to figure out what's missing. What do I need to multiply? So check off what they have in common. So my original has x minus 8, and I have x minus 4. Look at that. Nothing's missing. So you don't really need to multiply anything to the top and bottom except for 1. So that's awesome. We don't need to do anything. Now, are we that lucky for the second one? No, it's okay. But I got x minus 8, and I got x minus 8. What is missing from here? Let's cross that out. So the only thing that I don't have on the bottom, my original, is x minus 4, and that's what you multiply to the top and the bottom. Minus 3x times x minus 4. Alrighty, so now what we got to do is distribute, and then you're going to combine like terms. So distribute, so I got x squared plus x minus 3x, minus 3, minus 3x squared, and then positive 12, all over my LCD. And now what you're going to do is you're going to combine your like terms to make it as one pretty fraction. So it's negative 2x squared plus 13x minus 3 all over my LCD. So now you always got to say, can I factor that down even more? So let's multiply negative 2 and negative 3 gives you positive 6. Is there anything that multiplies to positive 6 that adds up to 13? Nope. So yay, that is your final answer. Alright, moving right along. Let's take a look at the next few problems. Step number 1. Okay, even though we have a new problem, your same first step is going to be to factor whatever you can. So I got the difference of two squares, and that is what numbers multiply to 4, but add up to 4, 2 and 2. So now what you're going to do is find your LCD. So I always like to start with what's in common. They have an x plus 2 in common. So I write it down. And then all I'm going to do is bring on the rest. I have nothing else in common. Now you might say, wait a minute, x plus 2, x minus 2, isn't that the same? It is not, because your signs are different. So that's why you're just going to bring it along for the ride. So that is your whole LCD. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to compare and contrast. Look at your original, and then look at your LCD and see what's missing. Now, if you notice, they both have an x plus 2. And they have another x plus 2. What don't I have? I don't have x minus 2. So that's what you have to multiply to the top and to the bottom. So I got x minus 2 times x plus 1. Now, I'm going to do the same thing for the next one. So I compare and I contrast, and I say, what don't I have? So I have an x plus 2 and just one x plus 2. And I have an x minus 2 in my original. And my LCD has an x minus 2. What is missing? X plus 2. So that's the thing that you need to multiply to the top and to the bottom. So now, of course, we're going to have to make it look prettier. So we're going to distribute. You can FOIL the first two. And then I'm going to distribute the next one. So I get x squared plus x minus 2x minus 2. And I got negative 2x minus 4 all over my long LCD. Now, if you recognize, I got two x plus 2's. So you could really write that as x plus 2 squared. And now, of course, you got to combine your like terms. So if you got to combine your like terms, okay, so I got x squared minus 3x minus 6 all over x plus 2 squared times x minus 2. Back later. And now if you take a look at number 6, I got to do the same exact thing. I have to factor everything that I can. So I am going to factor out an x for the first one. And then the second one, I say what numbers multiply negative 18 but add up to 3. X plus 6, x minus 3. So what we're going to do now is find my LCD. We always start with whatever we have in common. So I have an x plus 6 in common. And I don't have anything else in common, so I just bring along everything else. So that is my whole LCD. So now I compare and I contrast. Look at your original and then look at your LCD and say what's missing. I have the x. I have an x plus 6. The only thing I don't have is the x minus 3. And that's what you multiply to the top and the bottom. And now the second one. I have an x plus 6 and I have an x minus 3. What I don't have is an x. And that's what you have to multiply to the top and the bottom. So I did put a 1 here. It's okay. You could have just done x minus 3 because 1 times anything is itself. But if you want to keep it consistent, it's okay to do that. You just have to distribute and then combine like terms. Okay. And now I combine my like terms. So I get negative 11x minus 3 all over my LCD. And now what I'm going to do is see if I can simplify or factor anymore, and I can't. So, done. Alright, number 7. Now, it looks like it's kind of complicated, but because they're just variables, it's okay. That's fine. But you're still going to look at it and say, what does it look like? It's the difference of two squares. Everything's a perfect square. So that's why you're going to write it as x plus y, x minus y. So now what I'm going to do is find my LCD. So you're going to check off what they have in common and write it down one time. And then you're going to bring along whatever is left over. So that is your whole LCD. Now we're going to compare and contrast. Look at your original and then look at your LCD. In your first fraction, nothing is missing. So you just have to write down the top because essentially you're multiplying by 1. In the second fraction, I only have x plus y. What is missing is the x minus y. So that's what you multiply to the top and to the bottom. Oopsie, I'm going to ignore that for right now. I'll get back to it. Alright, there we go. So now what we got to do is we got to distribute. So I got x squared plus y squared. I got negative x squared plus xy all over my LCD of x plus y, x minus y. And then you got to combine your like terms. So if I combine my like terms, my x squares cancel out. One's positive, one's negative. And I'm left with y squared plus xy all over x plus y, x minus y. Now you're probably like, I'm done. Well, you're not, because you got to take a look at the top and say, can I factor it down even more? And yes, you can. You can take out a y. So I get y plus x all over x plus y, x minus y. And then if you notice, see how I have y plus x signs are positive? I get x plus y. They're positive on the bottom. They're actually the same thing. So they can cancel out. So I'm left with y over x minus y. And that is your final answer. Alrighty. Let's see. Let's take a look at number 8. We're almost there. Step number 1. New problem. Factor. X plus 5, x minus 5. This has a GCF of 8x. So I take it out. So it's x minus 5. Then I look at here and I see a GCF of 2x. Take it out. Alright. So, new problem. Even though I have 3 fractions, that's okay. You still factor. Now you're going to find your LCD. So it doesn't matter if it's only in common in 2 or 3. Alright, so we're just going to say, what do they have in common? They have an x plus 5 in common over here. And now I take a look and I have x minus 5 in common. And this one has an x in common. And then between 2 and 8, it's going to be an 8. So that is my long LCD. That's okay. Alrighty, so now we're going to compare and contrast and say, what's missing? In my original, I have x plus 5, x minus 5. This is what I have here. They're both there. The only thing that is missing is 8x, and that's what you multiply to the top and to the bottom. Now I take a look at the next one and I say, what do I have? I have an 8x, x minus 5, x minus 5. What's not there? X plus 5. So that's what you multiply to the top and bottom. I only wrote it to the bottom because I write really big. I ran out of room. Sorry about that. Alright. Next one. So I compare and I contrast. I have an x and an x. I have an x plus 5 and an x plus 5. What don't I have? X minus 5. But I have a 2. I need an 8. What do you multiply by? 4. So that's what you need to multiply to the top and to the bottom. So now what we're going to do is multiply the outsides together. 5 times 4 is 20. And I got x squared. And then I got x minus 5. So, yes, it's a lot, but you can do it. Now, all you got to do now is distribute and then combine like terms. So I got 24x plus 4x squared plus 20x minus 20x to the third plus 100x squared. Wow, that's a lot. And I know you know what to do next is to combine like terms. Make sure it's in standard form. So I start with my x to the third first. So negative 20x to the third. And I'm going to combine my like terms. So 4x squared plus 100x squared is 104x squared. And now I combine my 24x and my 20x. So that is 44x all over my long LCD. Now you're probably thinking, we're done. We're not done. We're almost there. We got 2 more things. So, of course, you always got to say to yourself, can I factor down even more? And I'm hoping that you're saying yes. On the very top, you can take out an x. And also, you can take out a 4. Actually, we're going to take out a negative 4. So if I divide everything by negative 4x, I get 5x to the second plus 26x plus 11x. Actually, I don't have an x anymore because I took it out. Good thing for erasers. There we go. Cool. All right. Alright, now the last thing you gotta do is say, can I simplify? You can get rid of the x. And also, This becomes a 1 and this becomes a 2. You can keep the negative in front, so it's negative 5x squared plus 20, 6x plus 11, all over x plus 5 times x minus 5. Alrighty, one more. Number 9. First step, factor. So it is 3 times x squared minus 1. And that's a difference of 2 squares. So I know that it is 3 times x plus 1, x minus 1. And that's all I can factor. Alright, so I'm just going to write down that last part just because it's a little bit easier. So it's 3x plus 1, x minus 1. And that is the only thing that I can factor. Now I need to find your LCD. So we're going to check off what they have in common. They can just have it in common in one of the fractions. I mean, actually 2 or 3. So x minus 1 is what they all share. And now they don't have an x. And it does not nothing else has an x plus 1. And between 3 and 6, it's going to be a 6. So that whole entire thing is going to be your LCD. Okay, so now we're going to compare and contrast. So if I take a look at my first fraction, I have an x plus 1, x plus 1. It's there. X minus 1 is there. I have a 3, but I want a 6, so that means I got to multiply by 2. And also, that has an x, but this doesn't, so you're multiplying by 2x. So I got 2x times 10x is 20x squared. And now I take a look at the next one, and I say, what is missing? I am missing a 6x and an x plus 1. So that's what you got to multiply by, 6x times x plus 1. So it's plus 24x times x plus 1. So now the last one is, you got to say to yourself, what is missing? All right, so let's say I have 6x and I have 6x. And this whole thing is missing. But if you guys remember, I got this when I had a factor x squared minus 1. So I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit. So I'm just going to save room and save time, I'm just going to multiply by 6x squared minus 1. All right, you can multiply it by this one here. That's fine. But I know this is what it is. So I have plus 5 times x squared minus 1. So now as soon as we do that, we have to now distribute and then we combine my like terms. And it's all over my LCD. And then I combine like terms, so that is going to give us 49x squared. And then I got plus 24x. And then I got minus 5. And you say, can I factor down even more? I don't believe so. Let's see. I got to make sure. Okay, there we go. All right. Feel free to check to make sure if you can factor the top. If you can, do it. If you can't, that's fine. All right. Well, thank you for listening and have a great day. Bye.